So here we go. Today we're going to take a look at salsa, and we're going to try to break it down into three main parts. We'll look at the piano part, the bass part, and then we're going to look at all of percussion, essentially all at once. And we're going to start right off the bat here with probably the single most important thing in much Latin and Afro-Cuban music, which is the clave part. So here's what it sounds like. Now that particular rhythm is actually called son clave. There's a couple different types of claves. The one that's used primarily in salsa music tends to be the son clave. And this specific version of it is called the 2-3 clave, because if you notice we've got a measure here and a measure here. There are 2 notes in the first measure and 3 notes in the second measure, hence 2-3 clave. If we were to switch those around and throw this over here, and this over here, those guys back down there. Now we would have, take a guess, 3-2 clave. Alright, so for this song though, we're going to stick with our initial 2-3 clave. There's not a whole lot to clave. I mean, the rhythm is the rhythm. So we're going to do this by, we're going to start by just creating a new track here. So create, insert a MIDI track. And there it is. Let's open up our library. We're going to go over here into the drums, and then we're going to look for kit core percussion. Bring that in there. And I'm using this particular kit because it's got mostly what we need. A lot of the stuff that's in here is definitely not perfect, but I know this is one of the default kits that comes with Ableton Live 9, so we're going to go with this, and then down the line we could always refine some of these sounds, find some better samples, so on and so forth. But the clave sample that's in here is relatively decent, so we'll go with it. So let's just create a empty clip here. It's going to be a 2-measure length. And I should have mentioned by this point an important detail here, which is salsa has a fairly big range in terms of tempo, anywhere from as slow as 150, which would be a somewhat slow salsa, all the way up to like 220, 230, 240, even 250 sometimes. For our arrangement, we're gonna make this in BPM is gonna be 180. All right, so we've got our 2-measure clip right here, and we're going to find the clave part, which is right there. Let's turn this on so we can hear it. There we go. And we can switch our grid to be quarter notes, so Command 2 a couple times. Now we're at quarter notes, and then type B to bring up the pen tool. And the rhythm for a 2 clave is notes on beat 2 and beat 3. And then in the second measure, a note on beat 1. Let's switch to our 8th note grid. A note on the and of 2, so that's halfway between 2 and 3. And then we'll click and drag this guy out. And then one more on beat 4. Click and drag him out as well. Now, realistically, it doesn't really matter how long these notes are because it's going to play the sample. And it sounds like this. Let's stop our old guy there. Now, if we wanted to, we could go in here and detail a little bit more if we wanted. Maybe bring up the glue so we get a little bit more of that tail. And then ultimately, I have this sent to a reverb over here just on my my A return track here. We just got ambience medium. So if you wanted to throw that in there, you could go to audio effects and then under reverb. I want to say it's under one of the rooms. There it is, ambience medium. So if you just click and drag that down in here, then you'll have your reverb track all ready to go, because we're going to use that quite a bit throughout here. And turn up the A send level, and now we get a little bit of just a little more room sound there. All right, so that's pretty much all there is to clave. If we wanted to get just a touch more detailed here, we could go in. And you'll notice in my original version of that, let's stop that. I put just a little bit of subtle velocity changes in there. That's kind of all personal preference, but obviously if you were an actual person playing this, you wouldn't play every single note exactly the same. So it's nice to have just a little bit of subtle variation in there. Let's go ahead and rename Command R. We'll call that Clave, and let's go ahead and rename our track Command R, Clave, and let's move on to the bongos. So we'll create a new track, insert MIDI track. We're going to use that same exact kit core percussion kit. Open that up. There we go. And let's go ahead and create a new clip. Now the bongo part, the kind of traditional bongo part that would get played primarily during the verses, because as the bongo player, you'd play bongos during the verses, and then once you switch to the kind of the chorus section of the song, it's not really truly a chorus, but the louder section, the mambo section, then you'd probably switch to a bell and play the bell part. For now, we'll just do the bongo part, and just I should mention. Got some pictures here we should take a look at. So, there's your timbales. So here's claves. The actual instrument is literally just two pieces of wood. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. There's not a whole lot to it. It's a couple pieces of wood and you click them together. And then we also have, here's our congas and bongos. So the big ones, those are your congas, and the small ones, those are your bongos. Pretty self-explanatory, right? All right, so let's get back over here. Now, the bongo part, let's go ahead and rename this real quick. Bongos. And name that as well. We're going to have to do a little bit of finessing with the bongo part. So we'll do a Command 2 so we can get, let's go ahead and click down here. Then Command 2, so we got our eighth notes going on. Grab our pen tool. Now, the primary line here is you're essentially going to be playing quarter notes. So high, 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 and then low. So that's the basic line. But if you're an actual bongo player, what you would do is in between every one of these notes with your other hand, you'd be playing some kind of ghost notes, some really softly tapped notes on the head. So the way we're going to accomplish that is, let's get out of this, select all these guys here, and then we're going to bring up the velocity. I'm holding Command, and that way I don't have to worry about coming down here to the velocity little things here. I can just hold Command and click and drag up and down. So I'm going to crank those guys up, and then I'm going to put some inner notes in here. In between, you know what I should do is do one, pull it all the way down pretty low, and then the rest of them will go in at that same velocity. And here we go. And that's a little bit closer. Now, ideally, if we had a better sample library to be working with here, we would have some actual tap notes, but we don't, so this is kind of the closest we can come up with. So here's bongos and clave together. All right, cool.